The training arena fell silent as Captain Rhea Voss stepped onto the combat platform. Around the elevated ring, dozens of Krathian cubs pressed their scaled faces against the observation barriers, their predatory eyes tracking her every movement. These weren't ordinary children. Each cub represented the future warrior caste of one of the galaxy's most feared species, beings who had evolved as apex predators on a death world that made Earth look like a garden paradise. Rhea rolled her shoulders, feeling the familiar weight of combat armor absent from her frame. The Krathian combat assessment required participants to fight unarmored, with only their natural abilities. It was meant to be an honor, they said, a chance to prove herself worthy of training their young. What they didn't say was that no human had ever passed. Across the platform, her opponent emerged from the staging area. Commander Zrakoth stood nearly 8 feet tall, his obsidian scales gleaming under the arena lights. 4 arms, each ending in razor-sharp talons, a tail thick enough to shatter bone, jaws that could bite through starship hull plating. He was a legend among his people, undefeated in 300 combat trials. He looked at Rhea the way a tiger might regard a mouse. The cubs chittered excitedly, their translator implants rendering their speech into a cacophony of predictions. None gave the human more than 30 seconds. Most bet she wouldn't survive 20. Only one remained silent. Kareth, the smallest of the cubs, sat at the front of the observation deck, his golden eyes fixed on the human captain with an intensity that bordered on obsession. He had watched her for weeks during her diplomatic mission, observed how she moved, how she spoke, how she never flinched when full-grown Krathian warriors loomed over her. The starting chime rang out. Zrakoth moved like liquid death, closing the distance in a heartbeat. His first strike came from above, all 4 arms descending in a pattern designed to overwhelm and crush. It was a killing blow meant for opponents who relied on armor and shields. Rhea wasn't there when the strike landed. She had moved inside his guard, too close for his long limbs to generate force. Her elbow snapped upward, catching him in the joint where his lower right arm met his torso. The crack echoed through the arena. Zrakoth's arm went limp. The cubs gasped. No one hurt Commander Zrakoth. The Krathian warrior roared, spinning with his tail in a devastating arc. Rhea dropped beneath it, her hands touching the platform floor as the appendage whooshed overhead. She was already moving again, staying inside his reach, where his size became a liability rather than an advantage. "She's too small," one cub whispered. "Too fragile. How is she doing this?" Kareth leaned forward, his claws scraping against the barrier. He saw what the others didn't. Every movement Rhea made was efficient, calculated. She wasted no energy, took no unnecessary risks. While Zrakoth fought like a predator, all power and fury, the human fought like something else entirely. She fought like someone who had no business winning, and knew it. Zrakoth adapted as all great warriors must. He slowed his attacks, used his reach, tried to corner her. For a moment, it seemed to work. Rhea found herself backed against the arena's edge, the commander's 3 functioning arms forming a cage of claws. Then she did something that would be talked about in Krathian combat academies for generations. She ran toward him, not at him, toward him, and then up. Her boot caught his knee, propelling her upward. Her second step landed on his hip. Before Zrakoth could react, Rhea was airborne, using his own body as a ladder. She twisted in mid-flight, her leg whipping around in a kick that caught him across the jaw with the full momentum of her ascent and rotation. The commander staggered. Blood, dark purple against his scales, dripped from his mouth. The arena erupted in shocked hisses and clicks. This wasn't possible. Humans were weak, everyone knew this. They came from a gravity-light world, had no natural weapons, no armor, no venom. They were diplomats, traders, engineers. They were prey species playing at civilization. Yet Captain Rhea Voss was beating a Krathian champion. Why? Kareth whispered, his voice lost in the chaos around him. Why is she winning? An elder instructor, hearing the cub's question, settled beside him. She isn't winning, young one. She's surviving. Watch closely. Kareth did, and he saw it. The way Rhea's chest heaved with each breath, how her movements were a fraction slower than they had been at the start. She was tiring. Zrakoth, despite his injuries, could fight for hours. Rhea had minutes at best. But she didn't stop. When Zrakoth pressed his attack, she met him. When he tried to grapple, she slipped away. When his tail swept low, she jumped. When his claws sought her throat, she ducked and countered. Again and again and again. She knows she can't win, Kareth said suddenly, understanding blooming in his young mind. She knows, but she fights anyway. The elder's throat rumbled with approval. Now you see it. Now you understand what makes humans dangerous. The fight lasted 17 minutes. When the ending chime finally rang, both combatants were still standing. Zrakoth bore a broken arm, cracked ribs, and a concussion. Rhea Voss had a dislocated shoulder, multiple lacerations, and could barely remain upright. By Krathian law, the commander had won. He was in better condition. By every other measure, the human had achieved the impossible. As medical staff rushed to attend both fighters, Kareth watched Rhea being helped from the arena. She was smiling, actually smiling despite the pain, despite the loss. She caught his eye and nodded, a simple gesture of acknowledgement. Elder, Kareth said, his voice trembling with something his people rarely felt, uncertainty. You said I would understand what makes humans dangerous, but I still don't understand. She lost. The elder's mandibles clicked in what might have been a laugh. Did she? Young Kareth, you asked me a question earlier, though you didn't realize it. You wondered why she seemed like an apex predator wearing human skin. Yes, Elder. She isn't an apex predator, cub. She's something far more terrifying. The elder gestured toward Rhea as she disappeared into the medical bay. She's prey that refuses to die, and prey that fights back, that adapts, that endures, that turns its weakness into strategy. The elder's eyes gleamed with something that might have been respect or might have been fear. That's not prey anymore. That's an apex predator in the making. Kareth watched the empty arena, his worldview shifting like tectonic plates. He had spent his entire life learning to hunt, to kill, to dominate. He was born to be a warrior of the Krathian Empire, a being of pure predatory excellence. But Captain Rhea Voss had just taught him a lesson his instructors never could. Sometimes the most dangerous thing in the galaxy isn't the strongest or the fastest or the most heavily armed. Sometimes it's simply the one that refuses to quit. Around him, the other cubs chattered excitedly about the fight, already dismissing it as an entertaining anomaly. But Kareth remained silent, his mind racing with implications. If one human could do this, one single, unarmed, outmatched human, what could billions of them accomplish? What could they become? For the first time in his young life, the cub felt something his species rarely experienced. Not fear of a predator, but respect for an equal. And in the medical bay, as doctors treated her wounds, Captain Rhea Voss smiled. The mission was a success. The Krathian cubs had learned their lesson. Humanity wasn't a prey species. They were survivors. And survivors, history had proven time and again, were the most dangerous beings in the universe.